the Special Investigating Unit has been granted permission to freeze the pension benefits of former Public Works Department official Clive Charlton. The NECS electrical consulting company was hired for maintenance and repair work at the department's buildings, but SIU investigations now show that the company allegedly submitted various falsified and fraudulent supply invoices. The agency says Charlton failed to verify whether those invoices were authentic, resulting in the department losing over R500,000. Let's go back to our main story tonight, the state capture inquiry delivering the latest round, or the latest installment, I should say, of its report, which has, as we know, faced numerous delays as far as what has been delivered initially. It was supposed to come out as one full reading, but now it's coming out in tranches, and the inquiry process itself cost close to R1 billion. But despite the evidence brought forward, the Commission so far has said that what happens as far as prosecutions will fall onto the laps of the likes of the NPA, because that is not within the framework of what it's able to do. Let's talk about the benefit to the country of this inquiry process. We're joined tonight by former DA leader Tony Leon and COSATU's Parliamentary Coordinator Matthew Parks. Gentlemen, my thanks to you both. So a lot has been made, Mr. Leon, about the cost of the inquiry process and whether it was worth it. Your take?
Well, it's not a question of whether it was worth it. It was judicially mandated after Jacob Zuma lost his case, which tried to not actually have the commission appointed. And after that, it then became a requirement of law that the Public Protector's report on state capture be investigated by a judicial commission. So it wasn't really a discretionary thing. But yes, look, a lot of the information, a lot of the findings actually were known. If you look at Bungani and others, they'd actually basically trawled all this stuff, and often in very difficult ways, they'd put into public domain. The advantage, of course, of the Zondo Commission is it gives a judicial stamp of authority to what previously could have just been said to have been allegations or rumors or he said, she said. It takes it beyond that. So I think, yeah, absolutely. And given that Cyril Ramaphosa told us, or told an audience in London, that we're looking at more than R1 trillion of misappropriation due to state capture, you've got to say R1 billion is cheap at the price.
And it's exactly what you're saying, I suppose, that makes this so much more infuriating for many South Africans, that these were things that were reported over the course of a decade, many of the allegations, denied all the time, yet now we've got a formal inquiry confirming much of what had been alleged and reported in the media.
Well, actually, I can just take it further in one respect, because she keeps popping up. She was in the first report on South African Airways, and now in the current one on Bosasa, and that is a former chairperson of South African Airways, Dudu Myeni. It isn't a question of it was in the public domain and things were said about her. There was a judgment in July 2020 by Justice Tolmay in the Gauteng High Court, which actually invited the National Prosecuting Authority to go and investigate Dudu Myeni for her corrupt practices at SAA after the action was brought by OUTA and the South African Airways pilots. And you've got to ask, in terms of going ahead, why did the NPA do nothing between July 2020 and here we are in March 2022?
Matthew Parks, the other insult to this is that you wonder how could public officials, people who are elected officials of this country, be so brazen in assisting the private sector to rob and steal the public purse, from the public purse?
No, it's a question we often think, all of us often ask, how could this have happened at this extent? People always commit crimes, they'll always steal, there'll always be some corruption. You can never fully prevent it, but this level of industrial scale corruption we've seen during the decade of state capture is beyond belief, it's beyond explanation. Perhaps what really helped it to explode was that it has led from the very top of the country, the most senior leadership of government and the ruling party. And of course, as we've seen, there was deliberate destructive elements, interventions to disable the South African Revenue Service, the National Prosecuting Authority, the police, intelligence. So it is literally a systematic effort and strategy. But there's been a huge price. Workers have lost jobs. Many of the SOEs have collapsed and retrenched workers. There's been billions of rands lost from the fiscus, which could have gone to provide relief to the poor, could have helped to grow the economy. it's damaged our international reputation. It's really plummeted the sense of public confidence amongst South Africans at large. But for us, it was a fundamentally important commission inquiry to have. We must commend the good work done by Judge Zondo. He's given us a very comprehensive 3-volume report. It shows to the National Prosecuting Authority and the police what exactly they need to do, who they need to go after. So we hope they will do that. If they don't do that, then it will be a waste of time. It provides a clear set of legislative interventions that Parliament must take up, that government must take up, and again, they need to do it. If we don't do it, it'll be another commission of inquiries, reports going to bookshelves, collecting dust, and we'll really lose any sense of credibility, the remaining credibility we have amongst the population and the world at large.
I wonder, though, Matthew Parks, if it's perhaps not too much of an expectation, because many people seem to think that from these reports being published and the recommendations for people to be investigated as far as the NPA is concerned, that we're going to see these convictions. But that's not a given at this point, is it?
No, it's not. And we have to keep the pressure up as society, trade unions, churches, political parties, everybody, pressure on the law enforcement agencies to do what is right. We can't expect the president to go and arrest people. He doesn't have the powers. But the leadership of the NPA and the police, they must do it. If they don't want to do it, they must be removed. So we have to put them on a very tight leash. It can be done. Despite all of our blunders as a society, we have had a former commissioner of police go to prison. We've had a former president go to prison. So that shows it can be done if there's determined leadership. We've seen within the South African Revenue Service, if you have a competent leadership put in place, how things can turn around. So I think for us, those are the kind of messages I hope we need to get onto. But government has to pull out all stops. We cannot afford to continue down this path with a sense of impunity. The fact that we had violence in KZN and Gauteng a year ago, cost of 50 billion rand, lives lost. We've yet to see one person go to jail. That shows you the level of work we need to do to rebuild the NPA, the SAPs, and the courts.
Yes, I
you go
agree
ahead.
with Matthew. That's not a phrase that would readily come from my lips or his, but I think he's completely correct. I would just add one thing regards Cyril Ramaphosa. Obviously, I agree with Matthew. He's got to let judicial and legal processes run their course, and hopefully they'll run a bit faster than they've run up to now. There is one thing in the latest COSATU report which really puts the ANC front and center of the corruption racket exposed there. There are two very senior currently serving ANC officials. The current head of organizations in the ANC, Nomvula Mokonyane, is basically indicted in the report. They can't really indict, but named for corruption. And also in terms of the Prevention of Corruption and Combating Corrupt Activities Act, the so-called PRECA legislation, the Commission has requested investigation under Section 3 into the current chairperson of the ANC, Gwedi Mantashe. So the question is, they both, never mind their positions elsewhere in society, they're both senior ANC officials. Now, Cyril Ramaphosa and the ANC commendably acted against the former, or I suppose the suspended Secretary General of the ANC, Ace Magashule, and he was put out to grass. Now, the question is, will the ANC, in the face of this Judicial Commission report, take the same action against this head of organization, Ms. Mokonyane, and this national chairperson, Gwedi Mantashe? And I notice he's already said he wants this taken under review, but actually, until that process ends, this report stands, and so do its recommendations.
First things first, I believe I performed my first miracle, a former DA leader and a trade unionist agreeing on something. But just on what you were saying, so you've got Gwedi Mantashe saying that on his reading of this report, it doesn't prove guilt on his part. And indeed, the wording in the report does not say that he is guilty of accepting bribes, but only that, yes,
prima facie evidence of corruption that needs to be investigated by the NPA.
Exactly. So based on that and the subject take on the wording and what we're going to get into as far as people taking this report on review, we're likely going to be dealing with this issue for many more years, aren't we?
And look, I'm not a defender of Ace Magashule, but he actually has been convicted of nothing. He has been indicted. That is the difference, perhaps. But maybe we're passing words here. If Cyril Ramaphosa is serious about the fight against corruption, begin in your own party, because these are actually, I'm talking here about party officials, and actually the defense, such as that Gwedi Mantashe gave this afternoon, as I read it, well, all this relates to the fact that I was Secretary General of the ANC, nothing to do with being Minister mineral resources. Well, actually, what Ace Makashula has been indicted on had nothing to do with his performance as Secretary General and everything to do with his previous post as the Premier of the Free State. So, I think the party could lead from the front on this, but I suspect, knowing the president of the party in the country, they won't. I would just say that, you've got to show serious intent here, and we also have to hope that the new head of the investigative division, the NPA, Andrea Johnson, will show a bit more vigor than the NPA has shown until now.
Quick final one to you, Matthew Parks. Another issue internally for the ANC is that some are already making statements about the fact that there's no finding by the inquiry into that Bosasa donation that was given to the CR17 campaign. Ramaphosa, we know, initially had told Parliament that, I think he said he wasn't aware, and then he'd learnt about it because it had been processed in some way that it was involving his son. It ultimately became an issue before the public protector, and that is why the inquiry says it did not deal with that because the PP's office was handling the issue. Are you satisfied with that finding?
Look, I don't think we should be, bureaucratizing or looking for excuses around issues of corruption. I think number one is for the National Prosecuting Authority to move at great speed to prosecute cases where it's necessary. I think for the courts to also prioritize these cases because, Tony Leon is right. I mean, many of these cases have been taken out for years and years. The former mayor of eThekwini, she was charged and arrested a couple of years ago. You've seen no progress. I think that's a critical thing. If you want to build confidence, we must move with speed. But the ANC also has to clean up its own house. It's lost huge amounts of public confidence. Many voters have simply not bothered to vote because of a loss of faith in it. And so that is also beyond a legal issue, as Tony Leon was saying. It's about the ANC implementing, without fear and favour, its own internal rules, the step-aside resolution, which is a very progressive rule, and being seen to be acting against corruption, whether it's against members of cabinet, the NEC, whether it's against ward councils or premiers or MECs. We have to apply the principles. We have to stick to the rules, no matter how painful it might be for friends or for comrades, whoever it is. If you don't do that, then we'll never be seen to be serious about dealing with corruption.
Okay.
And it will simply continue.
Matthew Parks, Tony Leon, good to speak to you both. Thank you for your time tonight.